Right now, people are dropping $40 on trendy health drinks that did not even exist 10 years ago. Meanwhile, inside a sterile laboratory, a researcher is finally publishing a study on a simple plant that has been used for 4,000 years. They are quietly confirming what our ancestors already understood, that massive gap between what modern marketing sells us and what actually heals the body is exactly what Scripture has been sitting on this entire time. You and I are going to look at this ancient text differently today, not just as a spiritual book, but as an ancient health map, where every single herb and drop of oil holds a deliberate layer of survival wisdom. We are talking about specific drinks and precise preparations used by real people fighting to survive in absolutely brutal conditions. These recipes were refined across hundreds of generations in the harsh desert until only the remedies that genuinely worked survived. Today, we're breaking down 10 specific drinks pulled straight from Scripture. We will start with the simple remedies that most people overlook, and we will end with the complex ones that modern medical science is still trying to fully explain. I want you to pay close attention to the very first drink on our list, because it changes how we view these ancient ingredients. This first one might actually be the biggest surprise of them all. It is something most people push past in the grocery store spice aisle without second thought, but Jesus named this specific plant directly. Now, researchers studying the chemical compounds inside it are finally starting to understand why it earned that kind of clinical attention in the text. Stick with me through this, especially for number 7 on our list. That one reveals the exact restorative combination given to a starving soldier who had been left for dead in the blazing sun, showing us a literal blueprint for human recovery. This soldier had not eaten a single thing in 3 days. The ancient text simply states that after he drank this mixture, his spirit came again. But read that as a medical chart. The biological science behind why his body suddenly revived is absolutely remarkable. Let us get right into it. Number 10 is cumin and warm water, the digestive spice that Jesus named himself. In the book of Matthew, chapter 23, Jesus actually calls out the religious leaders for carefully measuring out their mint, their dill, and their cumin down to the very last seed, while they completely ignored justice, mercy, and faithfulness. But I want you to notice what that historical detail actually tells us about cumin as a crop. You do not carefully portion out a tenth of something that is chemically worthless. Cumin was genuinely precious to the human body. It had already been used as a strict medicine for at least 4,000 years before that moment. Across the Middle East, India, and North Africa, the ancients mapped out its specific physical benefits long before microscopes existed, using it specifically to force digestive support, stabilize blood sugar balance, and build up a natural resistance to aggressive bacterial infections. Modern clinical research has now systematically explored every single one of those traditional uses inside strictly controlled laboratory settings. It turns out the ancient texts were not just guessing. Cumin contains specific, naturally occurring chemical compounds that have demonstrated powerful antimicrobial activity in clinical studies, when tested against a wide range of dangerous bacteria and fungal strains. These tiny seeds act like a microscopic defense system. The people of the ancient world simply knew it kept them alive, but modern doctors can finally see the actual biological mechanics working underneath the surface. Nutritional research has also measured its potential effect on blood sugar regulation, with multiple studies suggesting it may directly support improved insulin sensitivity in patients managing type 2 diabetes. Furthermore, scientists have studied its direct effect on human digestive enzyme activity, which finally explains the ancient, traditional use of cumin for severe bloating, trapped gas, and painful indigestion. Looking at it strictly by the numbers, it is a nutritional powerhouse. Less than a single teaspoon provides roughly 20% of your total daily iron requirement, making it a critical tool for fighting fatigue. If you want to make this as a daily drink, lightly toast a full teaspoon of whole cumin seeds in a dry pan until the warm, earthy fragrance fills the air. Add those seeds to 2 cups of hot water and let the mixture sit for exactly 10 minutes to extract the compounds. Strain the liquid and drink it warm, especially after eating a heavy meal or at the very first sign of sharp digestive discomfort. Adding just a pinch of salt and a squeeze of fresh lemon makes a huge difference in the flavor profile. The people of the ancient world consumed this daily, intuitively trusting the deep healing properties mapped out by their ancestors. Today, modern science is slowly working through, mechanism by mechanism, exactly why that ancient medical instinct was always fundamentally sound. Moving on to number 9 on our map, the ginger and honey brew, which is essentially an anti-inflammatory fire drink. You and I need to understand that ginger traveled the dusty, brutal trade routes of the Middle East for thousands of years. It was heavily prized as a culinary spice, intensely used as frontline medicine, and even traded directly as hard currency. You can spot it right there, among the aromatic healing spices that Jacob sent as strategic, life-preserving gifts into Egypt. Across absolutely every single culture this root touched, whether Hebrew, Egyptian, Greek, Persian, or Indian, it was consistently prescribed for the exact same physical failures. They used it to treat crippling digestive distress, chronic joint pain, aggressive internal infections, and systemic inflammation. Think about what that means. Every distinct civilization that ever encountered ginger reached the exact same biological conclusions, completely independently of one another. As an investigator of ancient health, that distinct pattern of medical convergence is something you absolutely must pay serious attention to. The highly active compounds inside ginger root have been directly linked to massively reduced inflammation in formal clinical studies. Medical researchers have also measured its direct effects on physical pain, with some fascinating findings suggesting it may perform just as well as common over-the-counter pills for certain types of muscular and skeletal discomfort. Doctors have rigorously studied its effect on severe nausea across multiple intense contexts, including patients undergoing heavy chemotherapy, pregnant women, and people in vulnerable post-surgical recovery. The clinical results are incredibly consistent across the board. When you combine that root directly with raw honey, these two ancient ingredients work in a beautifully complementary way within the human body. You pair ginger's heavily studied anti-inflammatory profile alongside raw honey's incredibly well-documented antioxidant properties. There is a deeply practical biological reason this specific combination appears across ancient healing traditions on multiple continents. To make it yourself, simply slice or heavily grate a generous thumb-sized piece of fresh ginger root straight into 2 cups of clean water. Preparing to extract every bit of that ancient medicinal value, bring that water to a gentle simmer and let it extract for 15 to 20 minutes. Strain the plant matter out, let the hot liquid cool down just slightly, and then stir in 1 full tablespoon of raw, unpasteurized honey. You must never stir the honey into aggressively boiling liquid, because high heat immediately begins to degrade the delicate, naturally occurring enzymes and compounds that actually make raw honey worth using medicinally. Drink this spicy brew at the very first sign of seasonal illness, after eating heavily processed meals, or simply use it daily as a protective, anti-inflammatory practice for your cells. Number 8 on our health map is barley water, known historically as the grain of the poor and the medicine of the wise. When Jesus miraculously multiplied the loaves to feed 5,000 exhausted people, the text specifically notes those were barley loaves, not wheat. Barley was the daily bread of hard laborers, foot soldiers, and ordinary people burning thousands of calories just trying to survive the brutal day. What they did not realize was that by drinking leftover barley water daily, they were actually consuming one of the most thoroughly researched, medicinally potent beverages ever evaluated in modern nutritional science. Barley water naturally contains a powerful compound called beta-glucan. This is a highly specific soluble fiber with a clinical research profile so incredibly strong that the FDA actually permits a direct health claim on food products containing it, something that almost never happens in the regulatory world. Inside the human body, this beta-glucan forms a thick protective gel in the digestive tract that actively helps slow down rapid glucose absorption from your food. Furthermore, long-term studies have repeatedly linked this exact ancient grain water to measurable, sustained reductions in dangerous LDL cholesterol levels over time. On a microscopic level, this liquid appears to selectively feed only the highly beneficial bacteria living inside your gut, and it has been heavily researched for its unique potential to stimulate immune cell activity when sickness tries to take hold, the key biological detail that most people completely overlook is that this powerful fiber actually partially dissolves directly into the cooking water. So, even if you strain out absolutely all of the physical grain to make a smooth drink, the remaining liquid naturally carries those meaningful, life-sustaining medical benefits straight into your bloodstream without requiring any digestion. To extract these compounds, simmer 1 cup of whole, unprocessed barley in several cups of water for a full hour. Strain the heavy liquid, squeeze in fresh lemon, and stir in a touch of raw honey for cellular energy. You can drink this either warm or cool throughout your day. Decades ago, formal hospitals routinely served strict portions of barley water to heavily recovering patients. They did not do this merely for comfort, but because the biological recovery results were mathematically consistent. The rough grain of the poor was indeed the medicine of the wise. Stick with me, because this ancient medical map only gets deeper from here. That brings us to number 7, a blend of date and almond milk, which is essentially human history's original energy drink. Let's look at a moment in the book of 1 Samuel together, a scene most people read right past without grasping the medical reality. A young Egyptian soldier, completely exhausted, abandoned in a dusty field, and totally left for dead, is eventually found by David's searching men. His body is shutting down. He has not eaten a single crumb or had a drop of water in 3 entire days. They immediately feed him dates. The text simply records when he had eaten, his spirit came again. That phrase is not just ancient spiritual poetry, that is an incredibly precise clinical description of rapid physical restoration, something deep inside the chemical structure of that food reached into his failing body at a cellular level and literally brought his pulse back. But eating dates alone is not the entire physiological story here. The ancient world almost never ate dates in strict isolation. They intuitively paired them with raw almonds. And when you physically blend those two specific items together with fresh milk, you create a biological fuel that functions completely differently than any single ingredient acting on its own. This highly specific nutritional combination literally sustained the most physically demanding, brutal journeys of the ancient world. Massive marching armies carried it in their packs, weary pilgrims successfully crossed completely barren, scorching deserts relying on it, and the scientific reason for their survival comes down entirely to how these 3 distinct elements chemically interact inside the human digestive system. The dense dates provide massive amounts of natural, unrefined glucose and fructose, delivering an immediate, life-saving surge of cellular energy to a fading brain and exhausted muscles. The crushed almond milk brings heavy fats, crucial magnesium, and raw protein that perfectly moderate that aggressive energy release. This prevents the violent insulin spike and subsequent crash that always comes from consuming fast sugars alone, effectively turning a short-term burst of fuel into steady, sustained endurance. The milk itself acts as the biological delivery vehicle, making the entire nutritional profile smoother and vastly easier on the human stomach than simply chewing the dry ingredients separately. Modern clinical research on dates even proves they actively support depleted iron levels and rebuild structural bone density. Beyond just sugar, dates also contain dense clusters of polyphenols, which clinical researchers have heavily associated with drastically reduced inflammatory markers in the human bloodstream. Almonds, meanwhile, have been extensively studied for their remarkable potential to support healthy LDL cholesterol levels, perfectly moderate post-meal blood sugar spikes, and actively contribute to a thriving, diverse gut microbiome over years of use. By crushing these nuts into a liquid milk form, you strip away the heavy digestive barrier, making every single one of those crucial survival nutrients immediately accessible to your desperate cells. There is absolutely no hard chewing required, and no massive digestive barrier to break down. The nutrition flows straight into your nervous system. To create this at home, simply blend 6 to 8 pitted dates with 2 full cups of pure almond milk. Add a small pinch of cinnamon to further stimulate blood flow, and absolutely nothing else is needed. This is just one drink made of 3 whole ingredients, and when combined, they form what might be the single most nutritionally complete survival ration the ancient world ever poured into a cup. Moving on to number 6, olive leaf tea, which served as the immune system's ancient, silent guardian. In his ancient visions, the prophet Ezekiel clearly describes a magnificent tree whose leaves are specifically, intentionally set apart for the physical healing of the nations. The olive tree actually appears over 500 separate times throughout the scriptural map, its heavy, pressed oil anointed great kings, and its severed branch arrived safely in the beak of Noah's weary dove. But the actual leaves of the tree, which have been largely forgotten by our modern, pill-obsessed world, contain a specific chemical compound that laboratory researchers are becoming incredibly interested in. That primary active molecule is called oleuropein. Rigorous clinical studies have definitively shown this exact compound to possess massive antiviral properties when deployed against a wide, dangerous range of human pathogens. This includes highly aggressive strains like certain influenza and herpes viruses. Under a microscope, the proposed biological mechanism is fascinating. The leaf extract literally runs interference, blocking the virus's inherent ability to replicate itself and aggressively penetrate your healthy, vulnerable cells. Beyond just fighting viruses, scientists have also deeply studied these ancient leaves for their equally powerful antibacterial and antifungal survival properties. Some modern medical research has even suggested its internal antioxidant activity is biologically comparable to pure vitamin E in certain clinical measurements. You and I need to realize that traditional healers across the brutal ancient Mediterranean absolutely did not reach for the pressed olive oil when a serious fever or illness struck their camps. They specifically reached for the raw leaves. Add 1 full teaspoon of dried olive leaves into heavily boiled water and let it steep for 15 minutes. Do not rush the chemical extraction. Strain the liquid and drink 2 to 3 warm cups daily when sickness hits, or just 1 cup for ongoing armor. The taste of that olive leaf preparation is sharp, earthy, and unmistakably medicinal to the palate. In the ancient texts, there was a profound understanding that if a plant tastes like medicine, it is doing real work in the body. Modern science is just now confirming that those early survival maps were incredibly accurate. Now, let us look at number 5 on our ancient health map, dark grape juice, the original longevity drink. Back then, the grape harvest was never just a farming event. It was a massive biological celebration. Whole communities gathered to process what they knew was their lifeblood. Songs were actually written about it, passed down through generations. The vine was tended, fiercely protected, and celebrated in a way no other food crop was. And the drink it produced, fresh, dark, pressed directly from the whole fruit, was treated as something genuinely sacred, a vital protector of human health. I want you and me to look at this together. Because the parallel is striking. Modern researchers studying cellular aging and longevity are finally discovering exactly why that deep. Ancient instinct to protect the vine was biologically justified all along. They knew it kept them alive. Fresh dark grape juice, completely pressed with the skins left intact, contains a powerful group of naturally occurring plant compounds that have suddenly become some of the most highly researched substances in modern longevity science. Researchers have been investigating exactly what sits inside those dark grape skins for decades now, specifically looking at what they do for human heart health in the precise way our bodies age at the cellular level. Resveratrol, a standout compound in this ancient drink, has been heavily studied for its unique potential to activate the very proteins responsible for deep cellular repair. This fascinating research is still developing every single year, but the serious interest from the scientific and medical community has remained remarkably consistent. Clinical studies focusing on dark grape juice have explored its powerful potential effects on arterial flexibility, the oxidation of LDL cholesterol, overall blood pressure regulation, and key markers of inflammation in the body. The results coming out of some of these controlled trials suggest incredibly meaningful physiological associations, proving that these ancient instructions on vine keeping were essentially an early public health initiative. The absolute biological key here is the outer skin. That is exactly where the highest concentration of these protective compounds actually lives. Fresh whole juice, carefully pressed with those skins fully included, gives your body the exact nutrient profile that longevity researchers have been chasing. You want to press fresh dark grapes and drink that juice the exact same day for maximum potency. But if you cannot do that, a store-bought option absolutely works, as long as you specifically choose a dark variety with zero added sugar and absolutely no concentrate. It has to be pure. The grapevine clearly meant something far more profound to these ancient people than mere poetic symbolism. The modern nutritional research is finally starting to show us the exact biological reasons why that was the case. Now, let us turn to number 4 on our ancient health map. Frankincense water, the incredibly valuable gift that actually healed the body. For the vast majority of human history, frankincense has been treated as a purely symbolic item. A simple ceremonial resin burned in old sacred spaces, just to represent divine kingship and spiritual atmosphere. That purely symbolic view completely changed the moment laboratory researchers finally began isolating its raw active compounds. Frankincense resin, carefully harvested directly from the Boswellia tree, actually contains an incredibly potent group of compounds recognized today as boswellic acids. One specific acid in particular, clinically known by the letters AKBA, has been extensively studied under the microscope for its remarkable potential to directly inhibit a major biological enzyme that drives systemic inflammation throughout the entire human body. It was an ancient anti-inflammatory. Rigorous clinical studies have actively explored these specific boswellic acids in the context of frustrating conditions like inflammatory bowel disease, painful osteoarthritis, and chronic asthma. Some of these modern medical trials have produced results that researchers themselves openly describe as highly promising, generating more than enough scientific momentum to sustain a growing body of peer-reviewed work. We now know that frankincense water, created by simply resting a small piece of food-grade resin in cold water overnight, has been used in Middle Eastern medicine for centuries as a highly deliberate physical therapeutic tool. As it sits in the dark, the tough resin slowly softens, steadily releasing its powerful water-soluble healing compounds straight into the liquid over the course of the night. The resulting flavor is actually incredibly mild, just slightly piney, and honestly far more pleasant on the tongue than most people ever expect it to be. to make this ancient remedy yourself. Simply take a single piece of pure, food-grade frankincense, resin about the exact size of a green pea. Drop it gently into a glass of cold water. Let it steep for a minimum of 8 hours, then drink it first thing in the morning on a completely empty stomach. When you look back at the historical texts, what those travelers actually brought to that famous stable was never just a symbolic gesture of respect. It was highly effective, carefully chosen medicine, deliberately carried across the harsh desert for its physical protective properties. Moving down our map, we reach number 3. Pure pomegranate juice, the absolute undisputed king of biological antioxidants. The pomegranate constantly appears in these ancient writings as a vivid symbol of everything a healthy, thriving land had to offer human biology. It was one of the exact 7 foods explicitly named for survival. That specific fruit was absolutely not listed by random accident, and it certainly was not included just to make the stories sound more decorative. It was specifically chosen because the people of that time already fundamentally understood what this fruit did to the physical body. And they desperately wanted to make sure no future generation ever forgot its power. Today, modern nutritional science is breaking down the exact chemistry of why they felt that way. Pomegranates contain an incredibly rich profile of naturally occurring protective compounds that are found in almost 0 other sources in the natural world. The moment these unique compounds are consumed, they begin to break down inside the human gut into highly active substances that have recently become a massive focal point in clinical research for their powerful anti-inflammatory properties. While this exciting science is still actively expanding, researchers are looking incredibly closely at what this does to the human cardiovascular system. Clinical trials testing raw pomegranate juice have actively tracked its effects on things like resting blood pressure, the dangerous oxidation of LDL cholesterol, overall arterial elasticity, and deep inflammatory markers. Those ancient healers truly viewed this plant as a complete biological toolkit. And they made sure to use absolutely every single part of the fruit. They prescribed the fresh, pressed juice for vital cardiovascular support. They used the raw seeds to deliver essential dietary fiber and trace minerals. And they even took the thick dried rind, the exact part that every single one of us throws in the garbage today, and steeped it into a strong tea to quickly treat severe gut complaints. You and I need to recognize the truth here. They mapped out a system of preventative medicine that we simply forgot how to read. If you want to use this ancient tool properly, you should press those vibrant red seeds completely fresh and drink the juice immediately before the delicate compounds oxidize. A high-quality store-bought version definitely works too, but you have to carefully check the label to ensure there is absolutely 0 added sugar and no cheap concentrate involved. Now, let us uncover number 2 on our health map. Raw honey water, the ultimate antimicrobial tonic of the ancient world, a land flowing with milk and honey. That famous phrase actually appears more than 20 times in the ancient texts. That repetition was never meant to be pretty poetry. It was a massive biological emphasis on human survival. And the absolute most effective, direct way those ancient populations actually consumed their raw honey was never just spreading it on a piece of baked bread. It was carefully dissolved into warm water, creating the absolute foundational healing preparation of the ancient world. Modern laboratory research on pure raw honey has produced genuinely striking medical findings. Diluted raw honey actually produces real hydrogen peroxide enzymatically. It boasts a naturally low pH that creates a deeply hostile, destructive environment for dangerous pathogens. Beyond just the hydrogen peroxide, raw honey naturally contains an incredible protein called defensin 1, created entirely by the bees themselves. This specific protein has been heavily investigated for its intense antimicrobial properties, including fascinating lab research examining how it fights back against stubborn, antibiotic-resistant bacteria. But the absolute most critical word to remember throughout all of this science is the word raw. The exact second that raw honey is heated past roughly 40 degrees Celsius, those fragile active enzymes immediately begin to permanently degrade. The standard processed honey that most modern people grab off the supermarket shelf has almost certainly been flash heated during its commercial manufacturing. It might perfectly look like honey, and it might technically taste like honey. But biologically speaking, it is a vastly different functional product from the living medicine those ancient populations were actually consuming. To follow the ancient health map properly, you need 1 full tablespoon of completely raw, totally unfiltered honey. It might be cloudy. It might even be tightly crystallized. Stir that into warm, never-boiling water, add a quick squeeze of fresh lemon juice, and drink it first thing in the morning. It is truly incredible to think that working archaeology, SDS, have actually uncovered heavy jars of pure raw honey, sealed inside deep Egyptian tombs that were 3,000 years old, and the honey inside was completely perfectly edible. This remarkable ancient medicine simply does not expire, and neither does the biological case for why it is absolutely worth making today. That brings us to our final destination, number 1 on the map. The legendary hyssop cleansing drink, the exact ancient plant that quite literally made kings physically clean. The texts say, "Purge me with hyssop, and I shall be clean. Wash me, and I shall be whiter than snow." King David desperately wrote those exact words while lying prone on the cold floor. Right after Nathan, the prophet, had forcefully confronted him with everything he had done. After the crushing, suffocating physical weight of his actions had finally landed on his chest, he desperately needed the absolute most powerful, visceral image of deep cellular cleansing he could possibly imagine. He did not reach out for simple water. He did not reach for a basic ceremonial washing ritual. He specifically called for hyssop. This exact botanical plant constantly appears throughout these ancient survival texts at every single critical moment of human purification. You see it heavily documented in Leviticus. You see it painted on the doors during the very first Passover. And you see it offered up on a sponge during the final moments of the crucifixion. Over and over again, in the absolute most physically significant moments of survival, they brought out the hyssop. For many long centuries, modern readers confidently dismissed this as a purely ceremonial tradition, assuming it was just a nice ritual element with zero biological mechanism behind it. And then, chemical researchers finally put this ancient weed under a microscope. It turns out that hyssop is packed with carvacrol and thymol, the precise compounds found in heavy medicinals like oregano. Those exact volatile plant oils are currently ranked among the most heavily studied natural botanical substances on Earth for their intense, proven antimicrobial properties. In highly controlled laboratory settings, these raw oils have consistently demonstrated remarkable broad spectrum biological activity against highly resistant strains of both harmful bacteria and aggressive fungi. Furthermore, emerging clinical research has strongly suggested that pure hyssop may possess significant natural antiviral properties as well. Several recent laboratory studies have actively produced incredibly fascinating biological results that modern researchers openly consider deeply worth exploring further. But here is exactly where the ancient medical text gets particularly fascinating for our modern bodies. Hyssop naturally contains heavy organic compounds that have been medically studied as highly effective expectorants. This means they physically help the human body rapidly break up and naturally mobilize thick, trapped mucus hiding deep inside the bronchial passages and sinus cavities, making it significantly easier for your lungs to fully clear themselves out. This exact physical mechanism has quickly made hyssop a massive subject of interest for modern doctors closely looking for effective natural botanical support for difficult respiratory conditions, and lingering post-viral congestion. Crafting a traditional ancient cleansing preparation is fundamentally different from simply brewing a standard cup of hot tea. You take 1 full tablespoon of deeply fragrant dried hyssop and completely submerge it in 2 cups of strictly cold water for 8 full hours. It must be cold, never hot. The precious volatile compounds inside this plant are incredibly sensitive to heat, and cold steeping is exactly what preserves the fragile medicine you are desperately trying to extract. After those 8 hours, warm the liquid very, very gently. Never let it boil. Stir in some raw honey and lemon, then drink 1 cup morning and night for 7 to 10 days during any kind of severe illness. The resilient ancient people, who relied on this incredibly potent hyssop preparation, absolutely did not have access to double-blind clinical trials or modern laboratories. What they did have was many hard generations of incredibly careful, absolutely consistent biological observation. They deeply watched exactly what happened to the human body when they used it. They saw that sick people breathed far more easily and the weak recovered far more readily. And they brilliantly encoded that crucial medical knowledge into the absolute, most enduring piece of survival literature in human history. The modern clinical research is really only just now beginning to fully catch up to why it works. Stick with me for this final point, because this is where the whole ancient map comes together. We are looking at 10 powerful drinks, backed by thousands of years of human survival, representing a profound body of biological wisdom that we nearly permanently discarded in our frantic modern rush to simply replace everything ancient with something cleanly manufactured. But one critical thing truly deserves to be firmly stated before you go trying these out. Physical quality matters far more than most people will ever realize. Pure, raw living honey mixed into gently warm water and dead, processed commercial honey boiled in hot water are biologically absolutely not the same drink. One is an entirely unprocessed, deeply enzymatically active medical preparation designed for human healing. The other is literally just empty sugar water, with absolutely zero complex biological activity going on beneath its surface. That exact harsh distinction clearly runs through absolutely everything we have looked at on this ancient map today. The authentic, real thing, completely unheated and sourced as physically close to the raw earth as possible, is exactly where the true biological value has always been hiding in plain sight. If this look into our ancient health map resonated with you today, make sure to gently hit that like button, subscribe, and share this vital survival wisdom. I truly believe there is an entirely new way to read these ancient texts, pulling out the exact blueprints our ancestors used to naturally heal the human body and outlast the toughest conditions imaginable. If there are other ancient botanical plants, historic healing oils, or specific survival foods you would like me to thoroughly cover next, please let me know down in the comments below. We have barely even scratched the surface of what this massive historical health map actually holds for us. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this deeply important video today. Stay healthy, trust the ancient wisdom, and I will definitely see you in the next one.